Hello everyone, this is AndresRestart, and today we are talking about how the first teaser for the next big 3D Zelda, the first one on Nintendo Switch 2, might actually be really close, and there are several reasons to suggest this. Both the history of things and circumstances right now definitely are leading me to believe that we could be looking at something happening really close, and when I say really close, I'm talking about this year close, maybe even this month close. Now, I'm not fully confident the reveal would be this month. We'll talk about that possibility and it maybe being a little bit later on in the year, but I am definitely thinking when you consider everything that's been going on and what has happened, this year makes a lot of sense. But, you know, it's always possible it takes a little bit longer, but this is the year where all the stars seem to be aligning here. How so exactly? Well, that's what we're getting into today. Now, before diving into things, let me point out I have this goal to reach 60,000 subscribers. We're getting close, just a little bit over 2,000 before we hit the goal. So if you find yourself enjoying my videos, I would very much appreciate your support, liking, commenting, and subscribing if you haven't already. So I've made this point a few times over the last few weeks, but it is Zelda's 40th anniversary. Now, some people might say, well, Nintendo said nothing about Zelda's 40th anniversary. They don't care, but that's not the case at all. If you look at the history of things, Nintendo always celebrates Zelda's anniversary later on into the year, usually around the summertime, even though technically the anniversary date is in February. They focus on Pokemon and Mario in terms of their big anniversaries at the beginning of the year, and then Zelda is later on. I don't think this time is going to be any different. We actually have a significant history of Nintendo celebrating Zelda's anniversary with several announcements, including game announcements. But when taking a look over the last few anniversaries, there has actually been a big Zelda teaser for the future. So going back to the 35th anniversary, in that summertime for the Summer Direct, Nintendo announced a few things for the Zelda anniversary, but the big thing was that they showed off the first gameplay for Tears of the Kingdom and revealed exploration in the sky. Going back to the 30th anniversary in 2016, Nintendo showed off proper Breath of the Wild gameplay. They had the hours of footage we saw at E3 in the Great Plateau, and we got the name drop, Breath of the Wild. Going back to 2011, the 25th anniversary, this was the release year for Skyward Sword, so there was no need to tease the next 3D Zelda during this year. Yet Nintendo still did something to tease the future of Zelda. They showed off that amazing tech demo that was showcasing how Zelda could look on the Wii U. It was an impressive demo, but that's all it was, a tech demo, yet still, in the anniversary year, around that summertime, they again teased the future of Zelda. Even if you go back to 2006, this was the release year for Twilight Princess. So consistently, there's something substantial Zelda happening in every big 5-year increment for the Zelda anniversaries. History shows that, and it's usually later on into the year. Do not panic, I expect something's gonna happen. But that's not the only reason why I think something's going to happen in terms of Nintendo showcasing the future of Zelda. Not only is it Zelda's 40th anniversary, but also, we're still early on to the generation for Nintendo Switch 2. The console has not even been out for a year yet. And consistently, at the beginning of every single generation, Nintendo's made sure to showcase the future of 3D Zelda in some way. There was a tech demo for Ocarina of Time. There was a Space World tech demo for the Nintendo GameCube. For Nintendo Wii, they didn't need a tech demo because they had Twilight Princess coming out as a launch title. But for the Wii U, as we mentioned earlier, they had that really exciting tech demo where Link was fighting some version of Goma. And for the Nintendo Switch, they also didn't need a tech demo because they had Breath of the Wild as a launch title. Now, I do think Nintendo has moved past the era of showcasing tech demos. Nintendo just shows the games they have. But the point is that now that we are in the beginning of the Switch 2 era, it does make sense to showcase the future of Zelda, the future of 3D Zelda specifically, to get more people invested in the console, including the Zelda fanbase. So there is a business reason for doing this. The same reason there's actually a business reason to celebrate Zelda's anniversaries, because fans eat that up. It leads to more sales. And so we actually have two historical patterns here that are aligning that I think are further increasing the chances that we should be seeing some sort of teaser for the future Zelda this year. But there's more. When you consider the gaps of time between big Zelda reveals, We're clearly overdue. So the first time we saw anything for Tears of the Kingdom was when they announced it as the sequel to Breath of the Wild back in summer of 2019. Then, going back 5 years in the summer of 2014, we had the initial reveal for Breath of the Wild as well. We didn't know it as Breath of the Wild then, but it gave us a demonstration of Hyrule and Link and how they would look for this new era of Zelda. Which, by the way, when this reveal happened, was only about a year and a half into the life cycle for the Wii U. But then we go back to 2010 in the summer where they first revealed Skyward Sword. That was just a 4-year gap, even smaller than the 5-year gap between the teasers of Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, the initial ones. And then if we go a little bit further back than that, Twilight Princess was teased in summer 2004, so that was a 6-year gap. But the point I'm making here is this: when you look at the gaps between the first look, the first teaser for every single 3D Zelda over the last several years, the longest gap we've seen has been 6 years, and that's going all the way back to the gap between Twilight Princess and Skyward Sword. And what's interesting about this is that we're already well past this 6-year gap. The last time we got a 3D Zelda teaser was for Tears of the Kingdom back in summer of 2019. Summer 2025 would mark 6 years. As we approach this upcoming June, we are actually closer to a 7-year gap here. In other words, we are overdue for a 3D Zelda teaser when you take a look at history. So that's something else to keep in mind when we already consider that the stars are kind of aligning here for a reveal to happen given both the anniversary and us being early on into the console generation. But here's another little piece of history to consider ever since Nintendo's been putting out the 3D Zelda games. The longest gap we have ever seen after the release for a prior 3D Zelda has been 3.5 years. The gap between Twilight Princess, which came out holiday 2006, and Skyward Sword, which had its first trailer summer of 2010. 3.5 years, basically. And so considering that that was the longest gap, from also this perspective, we are getting close to being overdue. Tears of the Kingdom came out May of 2023. I'm recording this video early March. 2 months from now, it will have been 3 years since the release for Tears of the Kingdom. We will pass 3.5 years later this year, and I am talking about the reveal happening this year, so it's possible we wait even longer, but if that's the case, this would be the outlier. And so when you consider all these different points, I do think history shows that it is certainly more than just about time for the next reveal, or at least the next teaser for a proper 3D Zelda. But it will point out a little bit of a counter argument here, to be fair. Technically, we have seen the Switch 2 editions for Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. Now, do I think they count? I do not think they count. Yes, they do show off 3D Zelda running at 60 frames per second at a higher resolution with high dynamic range, but to be totally honest with you, the experience is really pretty much the same as it was back on Switch 1. It's not really the kind of experience that would make me want to buy the Switch 2 solely just to play Tears of the Kingdom, a game I've already played to death at a higher frame rate. Yeah, I've dabbled with the enhancement, but that's only because it was free for me since I already have the Nintendo Switch Online Plus expansion pack. We've actually seen that Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom Switch 2 edition sales have not been very high. They're not really significant at all. So I don't think from Nintendo's perspective they consider this to be a significant release. And I don't think it's the kind of thing that's going to get people to buy the Switch 2. I think it's just kind of like a little nice sweetener on top of everything else there is to offer on Switch 2. But I do at least bring it up because it does muddy the waters a little bit here. Yet there's even more to consider. Not only are we overdue for a teaser considering the history of things, and also it makes sense because it's both the beginning of the Switch 2 generation and it's the 40th anniversary, but the live-action Zelda movie is coming out next year. I am sure this is going to be a marker for a new era of Zelda. It's time for Nintendo to move on, and we've actually been stuck with the same art style for Zelda longer than any other. Breath of the Wild came out in 2017, and then we also had the DLC for Breath of the Wild, then we had Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity, then we got Tears of the Kingdom, then we got Hyrule Warriors Age of Imprisonment. We've been stuck with this art style and this iteration of the Zelda universe for closer to 9 years here. We've never been stuck with one era of Zelda for this long, ever. So, from that perspective, we're also overdue. It's about time for Nintendo to show off the next generation of Zelda. It's going to feel really fresh when we think about how long we've been waiting here. But something else to consider here is that while Tears of the Kingdom did come out in May 2023, we did learn that the game was actually basically content complete in March of 2022 when they announced the delay. They focused on polishing things up to get the physics right. And so there is a possibility here that not the entire Zelda team was all hands on deck finishing up Tears of the Kingdom, and they may have already begun at that point with concepting and doing research and development for the next 3D Zelda, which might mean the next 3D Zelda could be a little bit closer than some have been thinking. And what makes this interesting, and we talked about this a few months ago, there was a leak that came out from Special Nick of the Xbox Era podcast. He is someone who does hear things, and at least in terms of Nintendo things, from what I've seen him report on or talk about what he's heard, he's always been right. It's not a lot of stuff, but it's been some things that have been completely correct. What we've heard about Metroid Prime 4, the Switch 2 launch bundle, the Mario Galaxy 2 remaster, there's been consistency here. So what he's heard about the next 3D Zelda, the next open-air Zelda game, is that it would be using the same engine, which does not mean same art style, just so it's clear. Both Wind Waker and Twilight Princess used the same engine. It would just mean that they are building off of the technology they established with Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, so expanding upon the physics and abilities they created with those games. But also that there would be some form of cross-dimensional puzzles. And so if we're already hearing leaks like this, then maybe Nintendo is fairly close to actually giving us some kind of teaser to showcase a little bit of this. Back in 2023, Fujibayashi already said that he had some ideas for the next Zelda that he had not discussed with Aonuma. So they already had some plans officially, at least as of 2023. We're already in 2026. It's been a few years. I'm not talking about the next 3D Zelda coming out this year, but us getting a teaser, I definitely think is very much in the cards when we consider everything that I've mentioned throughout this video. Now, there is a wrinkle to this, and I've been theorizing this for a while. I know a lot of you have it in mind as well. Are we going to be getting like a big, ambitious remake potentially first to tide fans over? We've been theorizing about the Ocarina of Time remake, and I do think that there's something to this. However, there's been a rumor that kind of counters this, but also this same person who's provided this rumor has also provided the rumor for the remake and is saying he's heard about both. A HD upscale of Ocarina of Time 3D, and then later, eventually they would give us the Ocarina of Time remake. I don't know what's true here, take it all with a grain of salt. We talked about this a few days ago already, so if you're more curious on that story, I'll have it in the iCard. But I bring up the whole idea of this remake because maybe the next 3D Zelda teaser isn't the next new open-air Zelda, but actually an ambitious remake that can at least showcase what can be done for Zelda from a visual perspective on the Switch 2. It's hard to say for certain what exactly is going to be the next big 3D Zelda reveal. There was an interview from last December, just a few short months ago, where Aonuma talked about how he wanted them, Nintendo, to be the first to bring Zelda to Switch 2, implying that they have something that's ready to come out soon. And this was in conversation about Hyrule Warriors Age of Imprisonment coming out last year, the first calendar year of Switch 2, which was made by Koei Tecmo. Basically, it implies that something significant Zelda, 3D Zelda, is going to be shown soon. Maybe he was talking about something else, but when we're talking about things in the context of showcasing Switch 2, another 2D Zelda probably wouldn't really do the trick, not to mention, we did just get Echoes of Wisdom in 2024. And I'm not trying to say we won't be seeing some sort of 2D Zelda offering for the 40th anniversary, I'm simply speaking from the perspective of us getting a teaser for 3D Zelda. I think when you think about all of this, it seems like something has to happen soon. I'm fairly confident it's going to be this year, based off everything I've mentioned. Of course, you never know for sure, maybe we have to wait a little bit longer. Perhaps next year? Maybe they want to wait until after the movie to tease the future of Zelda, although I wouldn't be surprised if they even have a release lined up for later next year after the movie comes out. And just for the record, even if there is kind of like an Ocarina of Time 3D or a Twilight Princess HD or Wind Waker HD port, that would be basically the same thing as like a Breath of the Wild or Tears of the Kingdom Switch 2 edition. Nothing like that would showcase the hardware in any significant way. and it wouldn't really be teasing the future of Zelda. That would be something else entirely separate, unless it's more of an ambitious remake and not just a basic port. But what do you all think? Do you believe the first Switch 2 Zelda teaser could be really close? Let me know in the comments below. This is AndresRestart. Thank you so much for listening and watching, and I will see you all really soon. Take care. Bye.